Now I've put a few trackers on my video right there. Notice that I have about 10 trackers, and I worked somewhat hard to put a tracker also really close to my point of interest, which is the actor. At this point, I've made sure that all my trackers are green. Just a quick word about those trackers. It is okay. It is okay to get yellow and red trackers. Sometimes it's also a possibility that the trackers have a very low quality of a feature, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to solve a good camera. But after the solve, if you get on the timeline, you get a red line or a green line with some yellow in it or some red in it, it's not good. It means that the camera is weak. So let me run a solution and see how I did. So all my trackers turned green. That means none of my trackers is weak. And I also have a green all over here. And if I go to the graph editor and I open up the transition of the camera, I see I have a nice transition. If I had a graph that looked like a seismic activity, then that means that my camera has some noise in it. And some noise can be because of correlation between the 2D and 3D, as it was mentioned in one of the modules. I have somewhat of a bumpy rotation, but that's fine. I have no focal distortion and no camera distortion. And if I look at the track status, I see that all my residuals are below 1, which means the distance between the 2D tracker and the 3D tracker are less than 1 pixel, and that is good. That's why we get green on all of our trackers. If I had the distance between the 2D and 3D as between 1 pixel and 3 pixels, then we'll be in this green, this yellow area. And if we had more than 3 pixels, then that means that the tracker has failed. Now, if I go and click here on the 2D, you'll notice that my camera has a certain animation. Let me just change the color of the camera. But changing the color of the camera is by going to the attributes of the camera, and we can change the color. I just want to change it to a color you guys will be able to see it. Let's make the camera yellow. And now you'll see that the camera has an animation path, and my trackers, my 3D null objects look okay. They represent the 3D space that was shot, and here are my trackers through the camera. Now, in the module, it said that at this point, the 3D scene doesn't know where north is. In other words, there is no definition for X, Y, and Z, or the scale of the 3D scene. So for that, we're going to have the coordinate system. For the coordinate system, I got this button right here, and I have a coordinate system. Now I can take this and I can snap it. For example, I would like the origin to be track 10, which is very close to my actor. That's going to be the origin of my 3D scene. So I'm going to take this and going to put it in here. And the distance, if we look at the the attributes of my coordinate system, as you can see, the origin went to track 10, the track that I snapped it to. And the distance by default is 100 units. The units here have no meaning. In other words, these are not defined by centimeters, yards, millimeters, kilometers, miles, foot, feet, whatever. But once we export this into Maya, these units are going to go into effect. Now, I'm going to say that the distance between my track 2 and track 1, track 2 and track 1 is going to be about 5 units. Now, this will define the size of the 3D scene. The distance means the definition of the 3D scene, the definition of the scale of the 3D scene. Now I also need to define two axes. Either it's y, x, or y and z, or x and z. So I have these two that I can define as x, and these two which I can define as z if I want. Or I can have these two that will define as y, and these two will define as z. Or these two will define in y. So I got a few possibilities. Let's define the y first. So I'm going to go to axis 2. And I'm going to say y would be not from origin 2, but through 2 points. This is the y is going to be between track 6 and track 5. Track 6 and track 5. Notice that I point from bottom up, because if I don't, my entire scene will be flipped. This is number 1. Now I'm going to define an x. The x is going to be between track 2 and track 1. X. It's going to be track 2 and track 1. Once I click on apply coordinate system, you'll notice that I did a mistake. My scene is flipped, and also the distance that I measured is a little bit smaller to my taste. I'm going to take this and change it to 2, the distance, 2 units, and the y is going to be from 5 to 6. See, this is the mistake I did. I pointed it down. So I'm going to say from 5 to 6. Apply. And now my scene is set. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to show you another example.